How's it going, Giants fans? Welcome back to Fireside Giants with your boys, Alex and Anthony. We got a big game coming up this Sunday against the Indianapolis Colts between themselves and Big Blue. This is going to be an interesting game. It feels like a trap game, but a lot of people are like, no, it's not. The Giants are going to kick the shit out of them. We're going to beat them up, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And I just don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of thinking we're going to destroy the Colts and walk away victorious very simply, very easily. I kind of feel as though we got to take this game really seriously because, guys, end of the day, we win and we're in. Do we really want to lose this game and leave it up to the gods? Like, seriously, do we really want to lose this game and leave it up to the football gods where we have to play the Eagles and we're probably going to get crushed? Maybe they'll rest everybody and we can win that game. But I'd rather win this game handily and then rest everybody against the Eagles and go into the wild card without having to risk any injuries or whatnot. So there's a couple things I want to discuss today, ranging from Azeez Ojulari, Adoree Jackson, how we might utilize these two guys if they are ready and able to play. So there's a couple of updates on that end. And, this is definitely a game that the Giants can win. It's a very winnable game. The Colts are very bad. We're going to go through some stats, some kind of recent things that the Colts have been going through, quarterback changes, defensive mishaps, and just how they are as a team right now against the Giants. And it seems to me that they're kind of trying to lose. They're on to their third quarterback. So it's like they're really not trying to compete right now. But with that being said, you never know. The Giants themselves are not a great team. We competed pretty nicely against the Minnesota Vikings last week. But, we did lose to a couple of, so-so clubs. The Lions pretty good this year, but we got kind of destroyed by them. And Washington beat Washington the second time around. But right now I'm feeling as though, we do need to beat a worse team in the Colts, and I don't want to let them hang around, Anthony. But heading into this game, how are you feeling? I know I feel optimistic, but I also want to take this very seriously because I want to lock in a playoff spot so we can rest our guys and make sure we're as healthy as possible for the wild card.
I'm feeling good and I'm feeling confident going into this game, but it's the NFL. Any given Sunday, anything can happen. No game is a guarantee, especially not for the New York Giants, who have had their fair struggles, especially in the last month or two. I mean, the Giants are coming off of a couple pretty solid performances, a win over Washington, a commanding win over the Commanders, is what I like to describe it as. And of course, they competed with the Vikings all the way down to a 61-yard field goal as time expired. That's how they lost. But the games prior, talking about blowout against the Eagles, a tie with Washington, a loss on Thanksgiving versus Dallas, loss to the Detroit Lions that really spurred their hot streak. So it's been a struggle the last 2 months for the New York Giants. So no game is a given for them, even though they're going into this game as the favorites, the 5-point favorites over the Indianapolis Colts, who have struggled immensely this season. Of course, Frank Reich was fired midseason. Now they have Jeff Saturday, an interim head coach. So that team certainly is a mess. They're on a 5-game losing streak. They're really bad. But Nick Foles has never lost a game against the New York Giants in his entire NFL career. So you can't sleep on him. You cannot go into this game overconfident if you're the New York Giants and basically collapse and blow your playoff chances. This is a game where the Giants need to treat it like it's a playoff game. It's not, but if they win, they advance their season. So that's how they need to treat it. This is just another way to advance their season and play some more football before the year is over. So I think that this is a huge game for the Giants, of course, but it's not one to underestimate because the Colts have been feisty in some games. They were close with the Eagles. I think it was about 5 weeks ago. They played Philadelphia. They only lost by 1 possession. The Giants lost by 3-4 possessions. So don't sleep on the Colts either. Again, the Giants should win this game probably handedly, but I'm not going to go in there way too overconfident because that is ultimately how you end up being an 18-1 team like the Patriots, right? Losing a game that you should absolutely win. So the Giants cannot underestimate this opponent. They need to go in there. Brian Daboll has to take care of business and bring this team to the playoffs for the first time since 2016.
Absolutely. At home in MetLife, you have kind of your home field advantage at your beck and call in your favor. The Colts have lost 8 of their last 9 games. Their last win was against the Raiders. They won 25-20. But keep in mind, their defense right now is like horrific, right? Cowboys, they give up 54 points. The Vikings, and this is kind of interesting, right? They scored 30 points. It was 30-0 against the Vikings, and they ended up losing 39-36. So 39 points in the second half against the Vikings. And then Chargers, they lose 20-3 more so because the Chargers just kind of played down to the Colts and nothing more. And, Nick Foles is their quarterback now, 145 yards, I believe, and 3 interceptions last week. Zach Moss is their primary running back with Jonathan Taylor shut down for the rest of the year and Nyheim Hines being traded away. a couple weeks ago. So right now you're looking at Nick Foles and Zach Moss as the guys you have to shut down. You got Michael Pittman, obviously a very, very good player, but when your quarterback is Nick Foles and, he's washed at this point in his career, 3.4 QBR last week, threw a couple of really bad interceptions, hasn't played this year, hasn't really played much in the last couple seasons. You're kind of looking at this Colts offense and saying, all right, we just need to put pressure on Nick Foles. So what's the number one key for the Giants winning this game? Put pressure on Nick Foles. That is what they have to do. He was sacked 7 times. And pressure was it? I don't know what that stat is. So 7 sacks, maybe 39 pressures in total against them last week. The Chargers just basically sent the house. They were just like blitz, 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 blitz. Make sure we put him on his ass. And they had a lot of good success doing that. So I think, Morgan Fox had 2 sacks. Kenneth Murray had a sack. Kyle Van Noy, Khalil Mack, Chris Rumph, they all had sacks. Like, this was a team that really put the pressure on him. So if I'm looking to get some, good value out of our guy like Kayvon Thibodeaux, our rookie 5th-round pick, that's the guy who's going to step up and really put some pressure on Nick Foles, and he could really make his stats look pretty good in this game. He could elevate his numbers across the board. Dexter Lawrence was I think he did not practice. It was either him or Leonard Williams that did not participate today. It was a rest day. One of those two. It might have been Leonard Williams. It was a rest day. So he wasn't practicing today, but he should be ready to go, I believe. And I know he had kind of a wrist thing last week. So that was a little bit of a concern, but I think he's okay. Dexter Lawrence gets a rest day every single week. So, he's been playing at an all-pro level. He's a guy I expect to really step up. The Colts offensive line has not been very good this year. But Azeez Ojulari, the ankle injury, he said it was sore a couple days ago, but it wasn't a big deal. He thinks he'll be okay this upcoming weekend against the Colts. But I'll tell you what, the best way, in my opinion, to use Azeez Ojulari, because this is a game that we have to win, activate him and just use him situationally. 3rd downs, whatever it might be. You don't have to overdo it with Azeez. You don't have to put him out there the whole time. Use him on a couple of 3rd down scenarios. I don't think that, elevating a backup linebacker, you can bench a guy this week and just utilize your star players like Azeez Ojulari as you need them. Now, Kayvon Thibodeaux, Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, those are the 3 guys I'm looking at right now saying, got to step up, got to have big performances, got to put pressure on Nick Foles. If their offensive line has a good game and protects Nick Foles, he can beat you with his arm. He did win a Super Bowl. So this is a guy that can get it done if there's not enough pressure on him. So expect Wink Martindale to whip out all the stops, a lot of blitzes, a lot of cornerback blitzes, guys like Jason Pinnock coming off the edge. Maybe Darnay Holmes off the edge from the slot corner spot, some linebacker blitzes. Maybe we see Micah McFadden get in there. Maybe we see Landon Collins get involved in some blitzes. He's had some success doing that in the past in the box. And maybe Julian Love. He's had some opportunities to do that. So, when you're looking at Nick Foles, Anthony, how important is blitzing him, putting pressure on him to forcing him to make mistakes and maybe winning that turnover battle?
Yeah, I think winning the turnover battle is always huge for the New York Giants. They've been able to win that battle many times this season, but in the few games where they haven't won that battle, they've really struggled, and in a lot of them, they've actually ended up losing. It's almost directly correlated to the Giants' win and loss record. When the Giants have that clean sheet, 0 turnovers in a game, they win way more frequently than they lose. But when they turn that ball over, that's when they start to face some trouble, and that's where their losses have come this season. Even the Daniel Jones interception. Now, I think Daniel Jones played great on Christmas Eve against the Vikings, but without that interception, the Giants probably go on to win that game. So 1 turnover is really all it takes to sink this Giants team, because that's kind of the style of football that they play. They're not really the team that's going to break away with a multi-possession win. They're going to win by 1 possession because they're going to keep the ball clean, control the clock, and just score and capitalize on the opposing team's mistakes and turnovers. So when the Giants start making turnovers themselves, they can't really play that style of game, and they kind of screw themselves up there because you can't control the clock if you're turning the ball over. And the Giants are very, very reliant on their ability to control the clock in every given Sunday this season. So one of the things that you mentioned, Nick Foles sacked 7 times on Monday night. Another thing to point out, Monday night, not Sunday night, but Monday night. It's a short week for the Colts. They have 1 less practice day on their schedule this week than the New York Giants have. So the Giants have 1 extra day to prepare compared to what the Colts have, and 1 extra day of rest, which I think is a really underrated factor when you look at this game, especially considering how the Giants are coming off of probably a performance that they lost, but feel really confident in it, because that was a very solid game against the 11-3 at the time Vikings, are now 12-3, one of the best teams in football this year. Giants went out there, they hung in there for 60 full minutes, all the way down to the last seconds of the game. So going into this game versus a Colts team with only 4 wins on the schedule, you got to be feeling pretty good after you just hung in there with one of the NFL's best teams. And again, the pass rushing department needs to step up. Azeez Ojulari, we'll see if he plays, dealing with an ankle injury, but if he does, man, he's been on a real tear since he re-entered the lineup in Week 13. He's been absolutely phenomenal. I believe he has 4 sacks in 4 games, if I'm not mistaken. And then we know what Kayvon Thibodeaux is capable of. When the Giants really needed a win, it was probably the most important game of the season still to this date, other than maybe this one. That game against Washington, Kayvon Thibodeaux came to play on prime time and pretty much single-handedly wielded the New York Giants to victory from a defensive standpoint. So the Giants are going to go into this game probably employing a whole bunch of KT and a whole bunch of Azeez Ojulari. If those two can go out there and be that lethal edge duo, then it's going to be a good game for the Giants defense, as we've seen, like that game against Washington. Now, one of my favorite clips that I saw that week was Brian Dable discussing that Kayvon Thibodeaux strip sack for the touchdown. And when he was breaking it down on film, he mentioned how Kayvon Thibodeaux comes around the edge. He does a great job pass rushing, gets to the quarterback quickly, and gets the ball out of his hands. But if you watch the play from the other side of the line of scrimmage, it was Azeez Ojulari creating the contain and shielding off a lane from Taylor Heinicke that opened things up for Kayvon Thibodeaux. Now, my main takeaway from that is Kayvon Thibodeaux and Azeez Ojulari play in tandem. And I think that last week against Minnesota, Kayvon Thibodeaux was really quiet in that game. He didn't have much productivity from a pass rushing standpoint. And I feel like a lot of that has to do with the fact that Azeez Ojulari was out of the game very early on. So without Azeez on the field, you see less productivity out of Kayvon Thibodeaux. And without Kayvon Thibodeaux on the field, vice versa for Azeez. So when those two are on the field together, that's when the Giants are at their best. That's what opens things up for Dexter Lawrence as well, and opens things up for one-on-one pass rushing opportunities for Thibodeaux and the Ojulari alike. So I'm really hopeful that Azeez Ojulari is able to play through this injury. Again, we discussed this in a couple episodes ago, Alex. If Azeez Ojulari plays this week, fine, you can rest him in week 18 because the Giants have already clinched and you can save him for the postseason. But this week, with the Giants needing a win to clinch a postseason berth, he's got to go out there. And if he does, him and Thibodeaux should be able to have a really, really solid outing against the Indianapolis Colts offensive line that has struggled immensely this year, and hopefully disrupt Nick Foles into another 3 interceptions.
Hopefully. So I have a question for you, and maybe you have a different opinion than me on this one. Lately in the secondary, we're kind of rolling with Nick McCloud and Fabian Moreau. Those have been our CB1, CB2, which is absolutely terrifying to even say out loud. But this is my question. If Adoree Jackson is 80% good, are you running him out there, or are you keeping him out this week?
80% good. I think I'm putting him out there because this is the playoff game for the Giants, right? So I think that, again, same thing I just mentioned with Azeez. You play him this week and you try and get the most out of him that you can, and then you rest him in week 18 versus Philadelphia, because that game, I mean, the Giants don't really have a good shot at winning in the first place. And if they win this week, it doesn't matter whether they win or lose next week in the first place. So you go out there, you put your best 22 players on the field against Indianapolis, you go get that win, and then you let them rest in week 18 as you move into the playoffs the following week.
Yeah, I think I would do the same thing. I'm just trying to think about it in the sense that do you risk, because it's a knee injury, and we're talking about knee injuries, MetLife turf. Do we want to run the risk? Do you just roll out Fabian Moreau and Nick McCloud again? And I mean, look, the Colts don't have a Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, right? They got Michael Pittman. He's good, but he's not even close to as good as Justin Jefferson. Right now, I'd probably say he's on Adam Thielen's wavelength, maybe a little bit better. So, that's up for debate. I don't really know. It's hard to compare those two anyway. I just can't wrap my head around, like, I want to throw Adoree Jackson out there and I want to get him involved, but if he's not 100%, are we willing to risk it? Because 80% Adoree Jackson is way better than Fabian Moreau or Nick McCloud, but it does worry me. It does scare me, because if we don't have Adoree Jackson for the wild card, we're absolutely screwed. And that's saying it lightly.
For sure, but I think that you give him that rest week in week 18 and he should be good in the postseason. Plus, I don't think he's going to be 100% no matter what. I mean, it's a knee injury and he hasn't played football in weeks. So He's starting to run. He's starting to do a little bit of cutting and jogging. He's working his way back, but to expect him to be 100% at any time before the season's end is kind of a pipe dream. I don't think he's going to be 100%. I think an 80% of Adoree Jackson this Sunday against the Colts is probably as good as you're going to get. You're going to get 80% health out of him for the rest of the season, and that's just good enough for me because, like you just said, 80% of Adoree Jackson is better than 100% of Nick McCloud, Fabian Moreau, Zion Gilbert, Darnay Holmes. I'm taking Adoree Jackson at 80% over any one of those guys. And I think that Wink Martindale's defense has struggled in recent weeks. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they don't have their primary boundary corner on the line of scrimmage to jam wide receivers within the first 5 yards. And that has made a huge difference in how effective the Giants' blitz packages have been. So Adoree Jackson, in my opinion, if he is able to put on the pads and go out there this week, he 100% has to.
Yeah, I think you're right at the end of the day, because ultimately, like, so the argument is like, if you don't play him, it's because you want him available for the wild card. But if you lose because you can't cover anybody, it doesn't matter anyway. You know what I mean? Now the Giants could still get into the postseason without winning this game, right? They could still very well do that. In fact, the Eagles are probably going to bench most of their guys, most of their starters, mostly going to be a backup team. So you could take it to the last game and try to sneak in there, but right now, I'm having a hard time, honestly. I'd love to hear your guys' perspectives in the YouTube about this one, because I'm definitely a bit conflicted, because I'm like, we need him on the field, but at the same time, I don't want to risk him getting re-injured, especially at MetLife on that turf. So I'm a bit worried on that end. But let's look over at the offensive side of the football for a second. You know, you have Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, kind of rally cry this week, show up at MetLife. Let's get it going. Let's win this game, get to the postseason. Even if the Giants defense struggles to a degree, and I think that they're going to be fine, because we did pretty well against the Vikings last week. I think that a couple of big plays from them, Hawkinson's big touchdown, that Moss, Darnay, and whoever that was, McLeod, Justin Jefferson's last second, just ridiculous run on that blitz, and it sets him up for the field goal. Jefferson just being unguardable as it is. I kind of feel as though the Giants have a obvious advantage in this game offensively, especially because the Colts defense has been really bad the last couple of weeks. Now, it kind of boils down to me, MetLife, really cold. It's not a great place to be throwing the ball. It's windy. I think it's going to be a little bit warmer this weekend, maybe 45, 50 degrees. So that's actually not the worst thing in the world. I don't know about the wind. But you always kind of got to be worried about that at MetLife. Daniel Jones has to show up and play a good game. And Isaiah Hodgins hopefully continues to compound on that success. Hopefully Richie James finds his hands. And ultimately, Daniel Bellinger, I heard today, I think Dan Duggan of The Athletic tweeted about it. They made Daniel Bellinger walk around with a football in his hands the entire day because he fumbled last week. So they're kind of going old school on him and making sure that he was trying to protect the ball at all costs. So interesting situation going on there, and just some fun and games, but ultimately a lesson to be learned. And you have an interesting stat, don't you? So on the offensive side of the football, the Colts have a vulnerability on their defense. Now, how could the Giants kind of extrapolate on that weakness and maybe take advantage of it?
Yeah, so there's a weakness right in the middle of the Indianapolis Colts defense, that is starting linebacker Zaire Franklin. The Giants too, yes, absolutely. But focusing on the Colts defense, Zaire Franklin has been really poor in coverage this season. He's been targeted 65 times, and he's let up 51 completions, 78%, for 428 receiving yards on the year. Now, that's a whole lot for one linebacker to be giving up, and he's been starting every game for the Colts, and he'll be starting this upcoming Sunday against the Giants. And so what that screams to me is a big day is in store for Saquon Barkley. Now, when you look at the stats and you see how the Indianapolis Colts have defended the pass versus defending the run, well, they've been much better in pass defense than they have in run defense. So they rank in the upper half of the NFL in pass defense, but bottom half of the NFL in run defense. So I'm expecting a big day out of Saquon Barkley, which is great for my fantasy team because I'm in the championship this week, and Saquon Barkley is my primary player. So let's hope and pray that I'm right about this prediction. But I think Saquon Barkley is going to get really busy, not only as a rusher this week. I think you could actually see him get maybe 30 carries again. And I think he's going to get really busy in the receiving game as well, because when you've got a guy like Zaire Franklin, who's been targeted 65 times, 78% completion percentage, 430 yards allowed, when you have him matched up on Saquon Barkley, you are taking advantage of that mismatch as frequently as you can. So running back screens or angle routes out of the backfield, aligning Saquon Barkley up in the slot, whatever you can do to get Zaire Franklin matched up against Saquon Barkley, you go ahead, you make that play, and you give the ball to Barkley out in space and let him work. And that's ultimately how the Giants are going to find a real matchup advantage against the Colts. And that goes the same for Daniel Bellinger, because the inside linebacker, yes, often covers the running back, but also often covers the tight end. And Daniel Bellinger has been great this season. Of course, he had a few weeks off with a broken face, but Now that he's back, he's fully healthy, he looks good again. And I think that now is the time for him to have another breakout performance, maybe get another red zone touchdown, especially when you have Zaire Franklin, who's really poor in coverage, guarding Daniel Bellinger. So I think it's going to be a big game, not necessarily out of the New York Giants wide receivers, but the receivers as in the tight ends and the running backs. I think they have a chance to really excel this week and be the difference maker for the Giants offense to go ahead and find that win and finally clinch that postseason berth.
Look, we got to beat any weaknesses in that Colts defense. There's a lot of them. They've get, like I said, 54 points against Dallas, 39 points against the Vikings and a half. The Giants can easily beat this team. This is a game that I expect the Giants to win, but you can't look past any week in the NFL. You just never know what's going to happen. So many upsets happen every single week, and it's just like, holy crap. So right now, we got to make sure that we're playing disciplined football. We win the turnover battle. We don't make dumb mistakes. And I think the Giants are more than capable of doing that. If we got that close to being the Minnesota Vikings last week, there's no question in my mind that we can beat up on the Colts. And despite the fact that they brought it close against the Eagles. Like, it really just depends. Are we going to play down to them, or are we going to steamroll them and go into the postseason on a high note? That's kind of what it comes down to, in my opinion. I want to see some aggressiveness. I want to see some downfield shots. Daniel Jones has been incredibly accurate downfield this year. Only 23 attempts, 20 plus yards downfield, but ultimately, he has been very effective when they've done that. So maybe they can find ways to open up that part of the game, and maybe the Colts will be sleeping on it because they won't be expecting it. So we'll see what happens, guys. But I'd love to hear your perspectives below in the YouTube comments, your thoughts on this game. You think the Giants can pull it out? Colts not so good, but hopefully it's not a trap situation. Giants got to go in there confident, feeling good. Just achieve what they're trying to achieve efficiently, stick to the game plan, win the turnover battle, win the time of possession, and play their game. Don't fall into a trap that the Colts try to lay. Don't fall into a dumb game plan that Jeff Saturday whips up out of the freaking garbage can at Wendy's. I don't want to see any of that crap. I want to see the Giants beat the crap out of them and just showcase how much better their coaching is, because that's what we've been relying on all season. Elite level coaching to keep us in games against much better teams. Elite level coaching should beat the crap out of bad coaching, especially when you find a guy in the I don't even know where they found Jeff Saturday, hanging out in some room in the back. They're like, you're now our head coach. He's like, all right, sounds good. So definitely an interesting scenario over there, but we got to win this game. And I think locking up the postseason, a berth would give us an opportunity to rest some players too. So always happy to hear your perspectives below. Make sure to enjoy the rest of your day. Like and subscribe as always. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.
TVSO.